Let's talk about speed. When you're designing your workflows, it's very easy to try to make a status and a transition for every little step in your workflow. But your objective should be to compress the time from when something is an idea to when that idea gets delivered to your customer. Because all these extra steps, all these extra statuses that are in our workflows slow things down. And yes, I understand sometimes they're necessary. Sometimes they're necessary for a compliance perspective, but most of the time they're just there to do some hand holding. And that is a cultural thing. That is something that you can improve, and that is something that your team should actually eliminate because it's waste. Your team needs the minimal amount of statuses to get you from an idea to a delivered product. No more, no less, because speed is key. Your objective is to compress that timeline because the longer it takes for an idea to get out to your customer, the higher the probability that your competition is going to beat you. And so be careful when you're designing your workflows. You don't want to add extra steps that aren't necessary. For example, if you're adding statuses in your workflow for reopen, if you're adding statuses in your workflow that technically should be resolutions, those are extra statuses that don't belong on your workflow. Learn how to make workflows appropriate. Learn how transitions work and learn how resolutions work because they will minimize the complexity of your workflows. Also, keep in mind that not every step in your business process needs to be in your workflow. For example, your grooming, your refinement, your definition of ready, your acceptance criteria steps, those happen in the backlog. Your story, your task, your bug, they're at the bottom of the backlog. You do all your definition there, you do all your refinement, your grooming, your estimating, everything you want to do it when the item is at the bottom of your backlog. Once it's ready, you move it to the top. And once it's at the top of your backlog, that's going to be your indicator that this item is ready and we want to plan it into a future sprint. That's the easiest way. You don't need 4, 5, 6 extra statuses to do that. Now let's talk about block statuses. Do we need to block a status? Maybe, maybe not. There's a variety of different ways to do this. My personal and Jira's personal preferred method is one of two ways. You either flag a story or you do a proper blocks and block by and you link two stories together. That's the proper way to do it because anything else is not going to really work as optimal. Plans is not going to capture it. Your insights on your board are not going to capture those blocks. So you want to make sure you do it either by flagging it or by doing that blocks and blocks by relationship. So that block status only just adds complexity because most of the time it's easy to go into a block status, but then you got to go back out. And so now you're adding for every other status of transition out. And that is a surefire way of basically slowing down your process and making a very complex workflow. Now, the next couple of points here that I'm going to make are around external teams. And so here's something that's very curious. When you're designing your workflow, you need to figure out who is this workflow optimized for? Because if you're optimizing for the technical team, your development team, do you need your design statuses in there? Do you need your QA statuses in there? And oftentimes people are like, yes, I need them all in there because there's an order of operations. And that's great, but you got to consider that for you to get credit, for Jira to say, yep, this got done, an item, a story, task, bug, needs to make it from the leftmost column in Jira to the farthest most right column in Jira. And until you get to the right, that burn down isn't going to come down, and those items are not going to be moved off your board when you complete your sprint. So items need to make it all the way to the right. So by adding steps for other players in your process, that is going to force you to create this passing the baton situation where then it gets really, really, really hard to estimate and figure out the work. So you should be building your workflow for the task at hand. And if you have different teams that have to participate, maybe there's a design element, maybe there's a testing element, you got to ask yourself, do those teams need their own projects? Do they need their own boards? Do they need their own work type? So there's a variety of different ways to handle this problem. But the mistake that people do is they just add every step in their process for all the different augmenting teams into the workflow. And now we got a 20-step process in Jira that's going to not compress our timeline from idea to deliverable. So have a heart to heart and really kind of think about your process and try to figure out what's the minimal steps here. What do we actually need? And how do we think creatively? How do we ensure that our QA process is represented, but not slowing things down? How do we ensure that our design, marketing, legal, all these other departments, how do we ensure that they're involved, but not slowing things down? Now, the right answer is that you might need a in design status and an in testing status and nothing beyond that. But just be careful because too many teams get stuck in this ready for X, ready for Y, ready for Z. And then we're doing X, we're doing Y, we're doing Z. And that just adds more steps, more complexities. Yes, it's more clear to your internal teams, but again, you want to compress that timeline from idea to delivery. And every extra step that you do, it's an opportunity to slow things down, for people to get lost, for people to get confused, for people to forget, and it just slows the whole thing down. So balance it out, talk with your teams, do some sort of value stream mapping, if you will, and try to really figure out what is the minimal amount of steps that we need. Make sure you're not adding extra steps. Make sure you're appropriately using transitions and statuses. Your statuses should be nouns, your transitions should be verbs. Make sure you're not adding extra statuses that should be resolutions. And at the end of the day, you just need to make sure that it makes sense, right? You need to make it make sense because any status that's in your workflow that doesn't add value or doesn't make sense, you should eliminate it. If you found this video valuable, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.